did you guys see what Dabo did with the whole like walk on situation? Where
No.
he's
No.
he's opening it up to people who do not just go to Clemson. So he's opening it up to basically anyone who got caught in the transfer portal and couldn't return to their team. So basically, anyone out there that's basically a free agent and can't sign right now because the portal is closed or their contract's up and they're not in school right now is able to come try out their walk-on practice. I think we're going to start to see a lot more schools do that because it's kind of like a gray line or like a loophole, I guess, in the whole transfer portal process. And from what I've heard and seen, is that was the first one to catch on to it, which could be very interesting in the next couple of years. I don't know if anyone else will do that this year, but Dabo posted about it on social media and everything. So it'll be great to see how that goes for him.
So you're telling me Clemson's roster next year is going to be over 1,000 players?
No, probably hand selected 20 people he wants to come have a walk-on tryout, though.
I did not see that. That's kind of ridiculous, but also a great thought because that's a great idea because I'm sure we'll get into it later in the show when we actually get into the transfer portal, like in that debacle. Like a lot of these players are going to be hung out to dry. They might not have anywhere to go. Like a lot of these schools are rejecting, them coming back just solely because they walked out the door on them. So, like that's a great idea. I did not see that. That's, good on Dabo finally, getting up with the times. It only took him 2 years of this, but finally.
Yeah, and speaking of the transfer portal, listen, the transfer portal has absolutely been on fire. We've seen an unprecedented amount of movement. I think we've seen over like 10,000, I want to say, total like college football players between the Division I ranks down to Division III enter their name in the transfer portal. So it's certainly been on fire. There's certain situations that we're definitely going to dive into later in the show, but man, before we get into some of the tomfoolery that has been happening in the transfer portal. Again, for those of you that are watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe. For those on Twitch, make sure you're hitting that follow button as well. And just some wild things happening in the transfer portal, and you already know where I'm going with this. The Darian Mensah situation is absolutely insane right now with how he originally stated that he was going to stay. And then, like the Duke fans, were definitely excited. With Darian Mensah, Duke's a dark horse contender to win the ACC again next year. This time, maybe a little bit of a better overall record in the regular season. But now, at the 11th hour, we've seen him in the transfer portal. Miami might possibly get into him. Duke's trying to pull some lawyer stuff. Boys, I've never seen anything like it.
I literally have no idea what to say to this because never in my life did I ever think we would be talking, lawsuits and we're suing a player like in the great sport of college football. Never did I ever think we were going to be talking about this. So, the whole, first off, Duke completely understand from their perspective, this kid signed a contract, we're paying him X amount of money, like, through sponsorships and whatever, however NIL revenue works. Completely understand it. It's similar to the Washington situation with Damon Williams. Dude, you signed a contract and you're going in the portal 4 days later. Like, what are we doing? Like, why are you trying to back out of it? So from my perspective, if you had even an inkling of a thought that you didn't want to be at that school anymore, then you at least got to put your name in the portal. Because from the Clemson situation, you don't know where you're going to end up. You might have to do a preferred walk-on at a school, or like what Redzone did last year, had the whole situation at BYU go down, enters the portal to, get out of the situation once he's cleared because he's like, essentially my reputation is screwed here, goes to Tulane, takes him to the playoffs. So, and I have no idea where this saga is going to go. I saw he can't even, field portal offers until like the 2nd of February, whenever his hearing is. Like, this is going to drag on for at least another week minimum. And, I fully get it from Duke's perspective. But again, if you have even a slight thought that you don't want to be there anymore, just enter the portal, because you don't know, because at least Darian Mensah's level, he's a really, really good quarterback. Duke would have been nowhere without him this year. They might just take you back. Just be like, hey, it was complete misunderstanding. Like, we might take away your pay just as a little like punishment, but you're still our quarterback. And to waterfall down from that, they're about to lose their top receiver too. Cooper or Barkate went in the portal as well. Hopefully to follow him to Miami. So who knows? I mean, it's a dumpster fire, to be honest. It's a dumpster fire situation.
Yeah, the transfer portal is just a complete mess. I mean, even if Mensah was decided to come back to Duke, if I was Duke, I'd be like, I don't really want you at this point. Like, it's a whole kind of circling back to you. We don't like saying the word culture anymore, but it's circling back to the culture situation. And anywhere in life where you sign a contract, if you don't abide by it, you're out. You're out on the streets. See ya. You owe us that $10 million that you owe us that $10 million we gave you, essentially. And I think the NCAA obviously does need to fix it. Rather, that's putting a 1 year where you have to sit 1 year after the first time you transfer, or whatever it is. I think part of that's starting to trickle into the NFL a little bit, where we're seeing these guys that don't want to work for it, and we're seeing the younger players in the NFL not thrive as much, or like the 20-year-olds that are going to the NFL not doing as well, because they're running away from the grind and not pushing, not sitting that year behind Jeremiah Smith. Like Mylan Graham this year didn't want to battle Chris Henry for the starting spot. Quincy Porter didn't want to battle Chris Henry. Like, it's getting to the point where these guys just run and only want to go to the place they're going to play, instead of trying to be at the best schools and be the best version of themselves. So I'm anti-portal at this point. I think you should have to sit a year regardless. I think the very first time you transfer, you should have to sit a year, unless it's like an actual reason to transfer instead of you're not playing.
Yeah, so I'm more of in the middle. So I'm okay, with these players like transferring, but I'm like you in the stance of wanting to have more restrictions. Listen, I've been 18, 19 years old, and I'm a little bit older, I'm a little bit wiser now, but I remember in that time, I'm going to be honest with you, I've done some dumb shit, okay, when I was 18, 19 years old. So I understand, like these young people, they're going to make mistakes, right? So that first time around, like if you want to transfer, regardless of what the reason is, like it could be something as simple as like you don't like looking at your RA in the morning. I don't care. I'm okay with them transferring, but not penalizing them. But after that, it's really a situation of where, unless it's something like your coach stepped down for any given reason, or if it's something even like in an Akron situation where the team failed to meet the like the APR standards, but like you're fine from an academic standpoint, like that person should be able to go somewhere that actually could be postseason eligible, right? Or even something as simple as, hey, I completed my undergraduate degree, I want to go and get my master's, something along those lines, right? Like common sense principles that I think 99% of college football fans, I think, can all agree on. But building upon, Darian Mensah, I know that he's going to get a lot of heat right now for entering at the 11th hour. What about his agent? Like his agent, should have been the one to shut it down from the get-go. As soon as he got that offer initially from Miami, he should have been the one that should have stepped in beforehand saying, hey, my client has already signed the contract. We're not interested. The agent is just as involved in this mess as Mensah is for even bringing the Miami offer to his ears in the first place, but no one talks about it.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of agents that you see nowadays aren't even real agents.
No.
A lot of these college kids just get, their homeboy from down the street, oh, just come represent me. Like, I'll hook you up, like however much money you can get me, by representing me for what's in my best interest. You know, they have no legal experience. They just see a dollar sign next to a number and a bunch of zeros. Sign the dotted line. You know, that's what you're getting. So a lot of these agents don't have their clients' best interests, and I feel like these schools are essentially getting scammed because this is two instances now that we're seeing players sign agreements and trying to back out of it at the last second. It's like what Brody talked about. You sign a contract. It is legally binding when you sign it. You know, you can have your lawyer there. You can damn well sure the school will have representation there. So it is legally binding. Anything you do that breaks that contract, like you're out on the street, dude. Like, what do you not get about that? What is the, how do you not understand that? I learned that from watching Suits. Like you signed a contract, you go against the contract, like you're out, dude. Like it's business 101. Like I know nothing about business, and like that's just common sense.
So something circling back to the agent situation is why do all these players need personal agents? I don't understand why schools and teams aren't having like a team of agents to help these players and their best interest, not like kind of like a guidance counselor, essentially, in a sense, I guess, to help these players be like, hey, you know, you're not really meeting the grade requirements here, but here I'm going to recommend you to this other school or something like that. I think that could also help instead, like you said, having your homeboy down the street represent you and just trying to trace that dollar, because now you have thousands of players sitting out there in the portal with agents who have no idea what they're doing. And now those players are on the streets with nowhere to go. And then going off the agent thing as well is like, what was Dante Moore? Was that just his buddy telling him to stay in college? I don't really understand what an agent's thinking there either. I don't know. I haven't even seen a college agent. Like I've never seen anything on a college agent online. Never heard about one. Like everyone's just like, yeah, my agent told me to enter the transfer portal. So
to push back on that, a good example of like representation in general is Lamar Jackson, because he has no representation. He represents himself. So he's going into all these contract negotiations with the Ravens. Like he's fully talking about himself. He has no one there, you know, to give him guidance or advice or, you know, like just an outside opinion. He's fully going on it himself. So I feel like a lot of these, I mean, that's a great NIL concept for these schools. Oh, I'm going to partner with X, you know, representation. You know, you have to, you know, you have to be with a lawyer from whatever, you know, company that you align with, or we're not going to take you. How about that?
And to be clear as well, like just looking at this whole thing from Miami's perspective, I understand why Miami did what they did, you know, again, in a desperation attempt to get a quarterback, because let's be real, guys, Miami needs a quarterback. They need to bring someone in for the transfer portal because Carson Beck, he is out of eligibility. There is no like 7 for 8 year for Carson Beck. That's going to ride in 2026
Finally,
to save the Miami Hurricanes, right? You know, he's going to be heading off to the to the NFL. The person that was the backup quarterback, interesting enough, Emory Williams, well, he entered the transfer portal. So he committed to East Carolina. So the only other quarterback that even had passing attempts on the roster, he's not on the team anymore. So the only two quarterbacks that were on this roster right now, Luke Nickel and Judd Anderson, they're true freshmen and a redshirt freshman collectively. Both of them have never attempted to pass before in a live college game. So you play a really dangerous game, you know, putting in someone that has literally never thrown a football before and put them in charge of a team that, let's be honest, you know, the rest of the roster is capable of, you know, making a deep run in the college football playoffs. So I completely understand, and I get where Miami was coming from in trying to get like Darian Mensah, but the fact that Miami, you know, is allowed to do without, you know, the NCAA really stepping in and doing anything, because let's be real, this is tampering. This is 100% tampering. We got to call a spade a spade. They're not going to get punished for it, though. Let's be real. They're not going to get punished. So, there's the smart way, and then there's the NCAA way. And we're doing the NCAA way. But give credit to Miami. I mean, they're taking advantage of the Wild West that we're in right now, and we'll see how all of this plays out. But man, it's going to be really interesting to see what Duke's going to do if Darian Mensah is allowed to transfer to Miami next season, or what Miami's going to try to do if Duke is able to win its injunction against Darian Mensah and keep him on the roster at least for another year, or at least prevent him from playing somewhere else.
The thing with Miami is they had their chance at quarterback. They had their chance. They went after Levitt, didn't get him. Obviously, it was their top target. So I think there's some things going on right now that are, to me, more morally unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And what they did with Mensah reaching out to him while he did not enter the transfer portal, to me, is something you shouldn't do. Obviously, I think a lot of teams, I think every team is doing it. And I think Miami just got not caught, but obviously that story's going to leak. You have a top 10 quarterback, in my opinion, all of college football next year that's decided to stay at an ACC school, and Miami, obviously national champion runner-up, is making the phone call once the transfer portal is closed. And to me, it's just unmorally acceptable, and I think it's all kind of crazy right now, wild, wild west, like you said.
Do we think Mensah gets punished individually?
I mean, I think it really depends on what happens with this injunction, right? I mean, if the injunction fails, and we see him go to Miami, I mean, what is there to do, right? I don't see the NCAA stepping in or the conference stepping in and I guess punishing like Mensah. Now, if he does return to Duke, I could see him getting suspended for maybe a game, maybe the first game of the season. To be honest with you, like if he comes back, it's gonna be similar to like Devin Williams of Washington, where you're coming back, but let's be honest, it's gonna be awkward. Like looking your like teammates in the eyes. After you pulled what you pulled during the the transfer portal period.
Hey, worst comes to worst, Miami could just play Malachi Tony at quarterback.
That is very
worst
true.
Comes to worst.
Hey, listen, that is very true. Malachi, wasn't he a like a quarterback in high school?
Correct. Yep.
Listen, that cat can play, man. I'll tell you what. Listen, if whatever happens, like whoever is the loser in this situation, like I'm very curious whether they go with like a Parker Navarro who does have multiple years of starting experience, won a MAC championship with Ohio, or someone that's going to be a little bit more under the radar in Taron Dickens. He's a quarterback at Western Carolina. Dude has 38 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. I don't know how this man is not signed to an FBS squad right now. I understand that it's the FCS level, and Western Carolina played in the SoCon, and the SoCon this year was a one-bid league in the FCS, but at the same time, though, like Taron Dickens, 38 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. I mean, that is production. And Indiana went with the approach of going with production over potential. So it worked out pretty well to me. They got a national title in their trophy case. I'm just saying.
Who knows? Who knows? But remember, there's also over 1,000 players still left in the portal. So, I mean, and it allegedly closed 4 days ago. So,
yeah, we're still somehow seeing players enter the transfer portal. I don't even know how that's possible, but it is what it is. I'm very curious to see how it unfolds for I guess the remainder of the next couple of weeks. Either way, I think we can agree. Like Duke, definitely not the biggest winner of the transfer portal. Don't know if Miami's going to be considered a winner or a loser. It's going to be dependent on how things go in the courtroom, which feels disgusting to say, but that's where we're at.
I mean, Oklahoma State has to be the biggest winner, without a doubt. At least in my opinion, being able to flip an entire roster and be competent next year, going from what they've been the last couple of years.
Yeah, listen, I mean, like Oklahoma State, like they can't be worse than last year, especially after 1-11. Like that's it's hard to be worse than that, especially losing to Tulsa and Tulsa themselves. They had a pretty poverty year as well. The Oklahoma State Mean Green, I think, are going to be in full force. They're going to at least get 2 wins, I would imagine. Then they get more of a 2.
I would hope.
We're going to get real spicy up in here.
I mean, speaking of Oklahoma State, do you see ESPN put out today their way too early playoff predictions? They have Oklahoma State winning the Big 12.
You know what? We'll see. That's
wide open. I mean, the Big 12. Who knows? Really, it's Texas Tech, BYU, and then anyone's game. If you sneak into that Big 12 title game, hell yeah, good luck. One game.
That's why it's called way too early predictions.
Yeah.
It's way too early. we have over 217 days until college football is back, and we're already talking about who's going to win a conference, and we don't even know what the final rosters are.
Yeah. I will say though, I really think the biggest winner for me, and I really haven't seen this particular team talked about. Because of the volume of players that they brought in. I really thought Notre Dame was the biggest winner in the transfer portal. I understand that they didn't bring a lot of people in. They only brought in 7 guys, so it's not a very big transfer portal class by any means. But at the same time, though, everyone that they brought in is going to be someone that's going to step in and start right away. They're going to have a revamped defensive line. Bringing in Tion Gray from Oregon, Francis Brew from Pitt, for the interior. They're also bringing in Keelan Keeley, on the edge as well. So the defensive line is going to be completely revamped. It's going to be vastly improved, which is important because what really bit Notre Dame in the booty cheeks early on in the season was their lack of ability to get stops. And because of their lack of ability to get stops in the first couple of weeks, they were the last team out in the college football playoff, led to them opting out of the bowl game because they took their ball and go home. But they revamped the defensive line. They gave C.J. Carr some really good receivers in Quincy Porter and Mylan Graham, who, yes, they don't have a lot of production, but they were highly talented coming out of high school. And then also getting a couple of starting corners in Jaden Sanders and DJ McKinney. This is a very strong transfer portal class, pound for pound. And it makes me wonder, with the amount of talent that's already coming back from Notre Dame, including C.J. Carr, who is a Heisman finalist or was looking to be a Heisman frontrunner for the way too early Heisman odds over on FanDuel. I really like what Notre Dame did in the transfer portal this year. They're my biggest winner personally.
For me, I mean, there's a handful of teams. I mean, I put out my personal winners and losers earlier today. The biggest winner for me right now is Texas. Just solely based on the roster that they are retaining from this year. One, you keep Arch Manning, the biggest player you have to keep. Didn't go in the NFL draft, didn't want to, transfer. So that's obviously a huge get. They flip Hollywood Smothers from Alabama, who originally NC State, committed to Alabama, flipped to Texas. You get 2 stud offensive linemen, Melvin Siani from Wake Forest and Jonte Newman from A&M, who are starter level tackles. You get Cam Coleman, who was the best receiver in the portal from Auburn, who was in talks with literally everybody, and he ended up going to Texas. Rasheem Biles is a very underrated linebacker pickup from Pitt, who was one of the best linebackers in that conference. Raleek Brown from Arizona State, who was their leading rusher and the Big 12 first team all-conference running back. Massanusetts, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but Michael Massanusetts, tight end for Michigan State. He's on the younger side, but also, has a lot of upside to him. And then a handful of other players. I'm not going to read the whole list, but I think Texas has retooled to be if not a SEC contender, a national championship contender, in my opinion. And that's why in my personal way too early rankings, I have them number one, because I think the roster that they've constructed from the portal as at this moment, they could still get more, to the players that they have returning, along with, I think Sark is at a really hungry position with that coaching staff as well. I think Texas is the team to beat in the SEC next season.
Yeah, and listen, like I definitely agree with everything that you were saying, because I was looking at the haul that they brought in for the transfer portal for Texas. I almost thought about saying Texas is my biggest winner as well. I gave a slight edge to Notre Dame because not only the caliber of talent that Notre Dame was able to bring in through the transfer portal, but really the only notable loss that they had was Kenny Mechie, and Kenny Mechie wasn't going to play at Notre Dame anyways because CJ Carr clearly established himself as the QB1. But listen, I definitely saw the vision when I saw the transfer portal class that Texas put together, and they may not be done because there's still a lot of players, very good football players that are still available. But with that being said, I will say that one team that is definitely not a winner. As a matter of fact, they're probably taking the biggest L in this transfer portal cycle. It probably isn't a team that you guys are thinking, but I'm looking hard at the Pitt Panthers. They have been down horrendous. They have been flabbergasted. They have been bamboozled in this transfer portal period. And here's why, right? So in this transfer portal period, going in, this defense was already, the type of defense that certainly had its struggles throughout the regular season. And 6 of the 12 games that they played in during the course of the regular season, they allowed 30-plus points. And so you came into this transfer portal period, you had some really nice pieces on offense. Love Mason Heischel, I believe, as the the true freshman that stepped in the middle of the year, was a stud muffin for Pitt. So offense, that's not going to be a problem for Pitt going forward as long as he continues to improve. Defensively was where they needed to get better in order to ensure that they were going to take that next step from being, just a really fun team to watch to being a legitimate ACC title contender, or a team that would truly be capable of making college football playoff. And so instead, not only did they not get better, they actually got worse, because not only did they lose Francis Brulu, right, who went to Notre Dame, who I talked about earlier, but they also lost Rasheem Biles, who you mentioned earlier as well. He ended up going to Texas. That is Pitt's 2 best defensive guys, who are now gone, and they're going to need to figure out a way to replace them. And again, this was a very inconsistent defense that Pitt had last season, giving up 30-plus points in 6 of their 12 regular season games. And then just combining that with the fact that Pitt lost 3 of their last 4 games, the vibes are simply not high right now with Pitt football, given how this transfer portal period left. So that's why I had Pitt as my biggest loser in terms of the 2025 transfer portal cycle.
You see, this is what makes college football so great, because it's one of the few sports that you can debate all off season, and none of the debates are simply going to matter until you spot the ball.
Yep.
The MLB, you got the freaking Dodgers. Everyone knows it's going to be the Dodgers every year at this point. The NBA, yeah, whatever. Who really likes the NBA anymore? But college football it's football. It's football. Last year it was Texas. The whole offseason, all anyone could talk about was Texas. And when it got to season time, they shut down their leg. And that's what makes college football so great, man. Yeah, you get all this parity at this point. And it's just like, is Sark going to really be able to do it this coming year? And no one really knows. Yeah, it's a really talented roster. Yeah, they should probably be preseason number 1 based off talent. I'm not going to disagree there, but they were preseason number 1 last year based off talent. And they weren't even that fun to watch until towards the end of the year, man. And it's crazy to talk about. I mean, some of the losers off the top of my head. I thought Nebraska was a big loser. Pitt was a loser. I have Kentucky as a winner just because of the Will Stein hire. I'm a big Stein guy. His parents hold season tickets. I actually know his family, which is pretty cool to see happen. But I think they're one of those teams that could be we talked about earlier, Indiana. I think they're kind of one of those teams in the SEC that could find themselves in the tier 2 and be like an A&M and somehow sneak into the playoffs if they get that schedule in their favor. And just like you two are mainly way more transfer portal guys than I am, but I think Ohio State obviously fixed their issues. Got a couple corners, got a couple DNs they needed.
Got a kicker. Got a kicker.
And then obviously Texas Tech, they got their guys. Which, I mean, we're going to talk about here in a few minutes, obviously. But I feel like Texas Tech is probably my one lock for the college football playoff next year at this point. And they would probably be the only team odds-wise, they would be the highest on my list to make the college football playoff. So, transfer portal is fun. We'll have a new faces, new places segment probably this summer a couple different times, which will be interesting. I always love doing that. So, but thank you guys for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go off the beaten path a little bit for my losers. Now, when you hear of this team, you're thinking, pedigree, national championships, the greatest coach of all time. The Alabama Crimson Tide are one of my biggest losers in the portal this year. They lose Ty Simpson. Now, granted, you have a backload of quarterbacks that you can choose from. So losing Ty Simpson isn't the biggest deal, but it is losing your starting quarterback. You had a chance at one of the best portal running backs, lost them to one of the teams in your conference. And holistically, I mean, yeah, they got a couple good pickups because obviously that's what Alabama does. But what you would expect from Alabama, especially to go out the way that they did in 2026 to Indiana in the Rose Bowl, 38-3, and that's the haul you bring back in the portal. I think they are one of the biggest losers in the portal, just solely because they didn't do enough. Not that they lost a ton, but granted, they did lose a bit. If you follow the portal and like recruiting rankings and everything like that, they lost a lot of depth and younger talent that when you first see them go to Alabama, it was like they're going to be a stud in say 2 years because they might not play as a true freshman, but they lost a lot of backroom talent that I think could have made a big impact going into 2026. And to lose that talent and not necessarily retool it to the level that we expect of Alabama, of Kalen DeBoer, who has been, notorious for going in the portal prior, I think that personally they're one of the biggest losers. Other teams on my list, Michigan, hear me out. They did get a lot of players that followed Whittingham to Utah, and back their offensive coordinator. But I think that they lost with the whole Sharon Moore situation. They lost a lot of, players in that recruiting class, even that just went elsewhere. And I think just because of that, you have to put them as a loser because none of us saw that Sharon Moore situation happening and losing, that backloaded recruiting class that they had. Another big loser for me, obviously Iowa State. You lose over 60% of your roster, 70% of your roster because your coach left. They're obviously on my list. Duke with the Mensah situation. I wanted to propose this question to you guys because I had some backlash on Twitter today because of it. I had Ole Miss as a loser in the portal. Now, the reason I said this is because I think now this was before they got Fernelli, the linebacker, who was from Cal, freshman of the year. Anyway, he was at Clemson, now he's at Ole Miss. I put this out before that news came out. So I personally think Ole Miss lost a good chunk of their star talent, and the players that they have coming up aren't, at least at the moment, I feel like aren't names that are willing to, live up to that star name level. Like we still don't know Trinidad Chambliss' situation. They did get Deuce Knight, but he's a raw product, played one game at Auburn. So you still have Kawan Lacey, a running back, which is obviously huge, but receiver is a lot of, solid return production. Mainly the defensive side is unknown. They did get a handful of players that, played well last year, but will it translate to Pete Golding in year one? It's going to have a lot of pressure on him, first full season as the head coach. So I personally think Ole Miss is a loser just solely because I don't think they did enough to retool the team that they had from 2025, 2026.
See, so that's really fascinating. So I actually thought like Ole Miss did a pretty good job, all things considered, with how like Lane Kiffin handled himself in terms of leaving from Oxford, Mississippi to go to Baton Rouge, essentially like a Baltimore Colts situation in the middle of the night. But because I'm looking at Ole Miss, right? Yes, they did lose some stars, like the Princewell.
Just say Princewell. Just say
Princewell,
Princewell.
yeah, like losing Princewell, that's a devastating loss. I'm not going to sit here and deny that. Him going to LSU, which I did call, I did post on Twitter. I had LSU as a favorite. I was right, as we are 53% of the time at least. So losing Princewell definitely stinks. But at the same time, I actually thought they did a pretty solid job of retaining their roster because usually, and we've seen this with North Texas, Oklahoma State, or Penn State to Virginia Tech, or Iowa State going over to like the Penn State. Like those rosters get devastated. And like Ole Miss, I'm looking at Ole Miss. Meanwhile, like the roster actually held together pretty well. Now there's going to be some guys that need to step up. But I mean, you could say that about the vast majority of teams around the country, right? I mean, only 4 players on Ole Miss's roster went to LSU. That really speaks to like the camaraderie that they have out there in Oxford. Now, maybe that's a case of they had to do some trauma bonding over the last month. It could be something along those lines, but that's actually pretty good, especially for this era of college football. Only having 4 players go join your former head coach at the new school.